this idea of blackness and an international blackness, because that's what Pan-Africanism is about, fighting white supremacy and fighting imperialism. So Pan-Africanism became the tool and the method for fighting this overbearingness of white supremacy, white racism, and also even white capitalism. So we are constantly resisting. Yeah, but now I like that, but we also need to be careful that we need also to be ideologically clear on what it is and what it's about. Otherwise, we will have, as you've seen, the fake Pan-Africanists who today are, we are fighting, I don't know what, and the next day they're Trump's best friend. So we need to be very careful because the two cannot go together.
Hey there and welcome to Fanya, Mambo, Africa. Super excited. And it seems January has begun with a lot of international affairs happening across, of course, here in Africa, across the world. And because of what is happening, we've all seen the threats that Trump is giving. We saw the Venezuela story. We've seen Greenland is under attack. We know what is happening in Iran. And of course, to break down these issues, we have none other than Dr. Njoki Wamai. Karibu sana.
Asante.
A Pan-Africanist, a doctor, an assistant professor, women rights activists. What did I leave out?
And many more.
And many more. Karibu sana Alpha House.
Asante. It's amazing the work you guys are doing here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you see the issues that are happening across the world, what do you feel? Where are we at the moment? How would you describe the world as of now?
Also, I needed to clarify, I'm not a medical doctor.
Oh, yes.
I am a doctor in politics and international studies. So you asked, when we look at the world right now, of course, it's one of the questions we've been saying as politics and international relations people is the issue of international law, the questions of international law and sovereignty. It's almost that given what happened, if we look at Trump's threats and actual, implementation of his threats in Venezuela, it brings back the question of, are we really sovereign, especially weaker states in the world? Because sovereignty, it means you have the power and integrity of your borders. Nobody can, attack you or invade you or intervene. But with what's going on in what happened in Venezuela and the threats to other countries, it's really scary. And it's an insult to international law.
So is international law valid, or has it been stopped for a while? Or does it just count for particular people?
I like that. I think you're right. International law, as at now, given what has happened, it means it only works in certain places and doesn't work, especially, again, for weaker states, right? Because I would be very surprised if, for instance, Starmer in the UK was behaving badly and Trump threatened to... Trump would never invade the UK or even Russia.
Why?
Because they're powerful, right? These are powerful countries. So there's a reason also... some people have called it the Donroe Doctrine, coming from Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine was a doctrine advanced by James Monroe, the President of the United States, in the 1830s, 40s, around then. And then it was about the Western Hemisphere. In the Western Hemisphere, it was about making the US powerful by being the hegemonic power in the Western Hemisphere. And the Western Hemisphere being, Canada, the United States, North America and Latin America, Caribbean, and that side of the world. And so now, and he did everything possible, of course, because at that time what was happening, Europe was also was colonizing, as you know, especially Spain was the big colonial power colonizing Latin America, and it successfully did so with Portugal, which colonized Brazil, and the rest was Spanish territory. And so with that, the James Monroe created this Monroe Doctrine that we are going to fight anybody who is and become powerful or hegemonic power in the Western Hemisphere to prevent any other competition from other colonial countries or powerful countries. And that's exactly what Trump also seems to be doing. Like, how do I create a hegemonic sphere of influence around the Western Hemisphere again? So some people have contorted Monroe Doctrine to Donroe, Donald Trump doctrine of creating a U.S. as a hegemonic power in the Western Hemisphere. And of course, it's geopolitics, and they're scared of China's increasing power in Latin America, China and Russia. So that is what he's really trying to fight. And of course, ideology. But those are the two main things, geopolitics and a bit of ideology, which I don't think Trump cares too much about ideology. It's more about power and geopolitics.
So when you look at it critically and see that, and of course you teach international relations and law.
I don't teach law, but international relations is very related to law and politics.
Obviously, because of what it covers. What are you telling students, or what will professors generally tell students? Because there is the way perhaps it's been practiced. There is the UN existence for a reason. There is the Rome Statute that exists for a reason. Then when these things are broken, are we about to have a shift also?
No, that's a very good question, because also it brings back also the legitimacy, the question of, in the first place, is international law or international liberalism, liberal institutionalism, is it legitimate, as it were, also in the first place? And especially for post-colonial countries like Africa. Okay, Latin American countries gained independence in the early 1900s, so maybe they were there. But in 1948, after the Second World War, and all these countries, powerful countries, or let's call them global north countries, they came together. First in the US with Woodrow Wilson, and then they went to Geneva, and they created first the United Nations as we know it. So when they created the United Nations, where was Kenya in 1948? You know, where
British
was
represented us?
Thank you.
Obviously,
sadly. Where was Mozambique, represented by Portugal? You know, think of any Senegal, represented by France. So we were not there. And those are like so many countries, 50 plus countries, were not part of that. Asia, India became independent, was it 1948, thereabout? So even India and all these countries were not there. So also this idea of international law as a legitimate thing, you know, we need to start questioning it, because, and that's why even right now, 80 years after the UN, there is something now going on, and countries from the global south, Africa, some in Latin America and the Caribbean and Asia, are saying the UN has to be reformed. Because this 1948 was a watershed moment in international, what we call, international institutions, international law. You know, the UN conventions, the Geneva Conventions were created then, and one of them, I think Article 2, was that one about territorial integrity, sovereignty, and you shall not intervene, you know? But then, over time, that's what I'm saying, many of our countries first were not represented. So it even starts questioning the legitimacy. And not to support what Donald Trump is doing. Of course, it's horrible. But we also need to start questioning and asking for the reform of the international order. And remember, we say in international relations, the main issue was, how do we ensure order in the world? But remember, who was fighting? Okay, we were fighting the British, but who was fighting really in that international, this order they wanted to create? It was order between the powerful countries, because they're the ones who were fighting each other in the Second World War. Germany versus, Russia and the US and all the allied forces. So it was order between them. And so even when we look at international relations scholarships, two kind of fields of thought emerged after that. The people who believed our main business is to maintain order, and we can only maintain order by making sure some countries are powerful and they have this big stick to beat others, into
adjusting to the system.
Kwa line moja, eh? So there were those, and those are what we call the realists. And people like Hans Morgenthau and other scholars were there saying, people, we cannot trust human beings, and it's an anarchical society. The world, countries, again, nobody is thinking about you Africans or Asians. They're just thinking about themselves. They're the ones who are anarchical. So so there was that group, and then there was another group called liberals that would say, no, the only way for us to stop fighting each other, let us create institutions that bind us. Let us trade together. Let us ensure there's, private property. Give people rights to private ownership of things. Because once you have that, you're going to start trading with another one with what you don't have. And even that is the reasoning that was taken to the creation of the European Union, what was called the Maastricht Treaty later. So all these, the liberals and the realists, all of them, again, excluding many of us African countries, some countries in the Caribbean and Latin America, and excluding, of course, lots of Asian countries, created the system as we know it today of international law, from the UN Geneva Conventions, the United Nations, which is the most significant international institution, which was based on that principle of liberalism, that we need to be together, cooperate. And in liberalism, we're all equal.
Yeah.
But that's the lie. But in realists who said we are not all equal, and so the most powerful of us, we are going to give them more power and hierarchy, and we will call them the P5.
Yeah.
P5, which is the most powerful 5 countries. And those are the countries that once they sit in the UN, and they created a body called the UN Security Council, have the right to make decisions on behalf of everybody else in the world. Some of those P5 countries are no longer even powerful anymore, like Britain, but they are still there. So those are the challenges of international law. I think that was a quick class on
It's a quick class.
IR, basic international relations.
That is what they call, these countries have what they call the veto power.
The veto
so
power.
If one country says no, that ain't going anywhere.
It's not happening. But also because they needed to balance each other. Because soon after 1948, remember what happened up to 1989, we entered the Cold War. So everybody was like, checkmate. Yeah. Those of you who play chess, checkmate. Exactly.
So Trump is being said to be distracting the world order as we have known it.
Yeah.
And we are now on what is being called the creation, an era of creating of the new world order. So in this new world order, from your perspective, how do you see it panning out? Considering that Trump is fighting everyone, I don't know, except who.
Yeah.
Or just ensuring that the US is the it.
So first you see what was the original world order, is what I was trying to explain.
Yes.
1948, the dilemmas, the contradictions, given that many of us, global South countries, were not there. Then the Cold War happens, and then 1989, of course, the Berlin Wall falls, the end of the Cold War. And of course, liberalism triumphs after that. Liberalism is, we are all nice guys, we are all equal at the international level. Nobody shall attack anybody else because we are equal as countries. And sovereignty, based on that principle of sovereignty. And that's the core of liberalism, is sovereignty and equality before the law. Even the Kenyan constitution, remember, is also based on that liberal principle of equality before the law. Everybody is equal. But of course, we know some are more equal than others. But exactly, so that has been the world order. And the US, the leader of these so-called liberal ideals, has been United States. You remember part of the reason we used to have, I don't know whether the Gen Zs in the room would, there was somebody once called Hemstone. I don't know whether you remember Hemstone. Hemstone was the most maybe vocal US ambassador, Kenya, the ambassador of the US to Kenya.
Which year? The one I remember is Rana Michael.
That one was a chilled version of.
So this Gen Zs would never know. Yeah. If I don't know, and I'm a millennial.
Yeah. I'm an very old millennial. So anyway. So Hemstone was like at that time of Moi, at the end of Moi's regime. And he was very critical of Moi, Okay. And exactly because at that time, or the US as it were, and as it continues, apart, especially when you have a Democrat as a president, their main business is to spread democratic ideals around the world. And that's why you have organizations like National Democratic Institute, right? And other NGOs that they support. So their main business is how do we support democracies around the world and how do we make democracies thrive around the world?
But they still define what democracy is. That is in their eye.
Exactly, that's the challenge. But remember also where the little history I've given, we were not there to define what is equality. I don't know what is that in 1948. Where all these, and I can even go much, much behind in 1660s, where the age of enlightenment happened in Europe. And when this the challenge with Europe, when they started discovering things, when they had those aha moments, because of there were periods of great scientific discoveries. So they had the aha moments. Yeah. And the aha moment was like, oh my God, we have finally woken up from the darkness. You remember the stories we used to read in nursery school, and there was always like a witch running on top of a broom. That they really believed in those things, So the period of scientific discovery, and then the discovery of within that period of scientific discovery, they were able to also produce or also not discover but manufacture the printing press. And so the printing press now was able to spread so many these new ideas. Yeah. So you never now had to believe in even God, because they were so like, here we are complaining about Pastor Owur cheating some people that they have, For them, it's like all of them believed in the king and the pope. Those two are like the same. And then power was not just power, your being was really linked to religion and the king owned the land and the pope, it was crazy. And so the period of great scientific discovery helped them realize, oh my God, these guys are not that important. Science is more important. What's his name? He saw the tree falling. Isaac Newton in my former university saw the fruit falling and they were like, wow, you see, this has nothing to do with God, and he did the calculations on gravity. So all those things happened, and these people realized, actually, and it's called the Enlightenment period. That Enlightenment period was not just enlightenment in scientific thought, but also it became enlightenment in also political thought. So they started defining ideas like liberty, freedom, equality. And that's where even the idea of democracy and the state as we know it in the modern way became interpreted from the Western world. And then after that, it was transported to Africa, to Asia through colonialism. Yeah. Now, that's why we have to go back to what is democracy for us also. Because does it mean before the British showed up in Kenya that we were not democratic? If you look at, for instance, Kikuyus, who Kikuyus did not even have a king or somebody and we did not have an autocratic system. We had a council of elders, and not just Kikuyus. I see a council of elders among the Luo, council of elders during Njoki. Yeah. Of course, they are not also that good because they excluded women. But you can see our systems were more democratic than the autocratic systems. There was power, at least shared power, by maybe the people that people thought these were good people, good men, because again, we had a few individual women, of course, like Mekatilili doing amazing things. But power really rested among councils of men. So it's us also to go back and start saying, what was our democracy like? Because I feel also our crisis of democracy in many African countries, and especially, I mean, we can use Kenya as an example, is because we took all these Western forms of democracy, which you can see were crafted so long ago for a very different context of people, and then transferred them as very alien concepts to very different contexts. Yes.
So that has an effect on why we are where we are today as maybe a continent. But looking at what Trump is doing, how is that pushing people to an awakening of, now we are questioning the democracy of the West. I mean, it's a discussion that oftentimes people question.
Yes.
Because you've just given an example of the Kikuyus. I know the Luyas had the Wanga kingdom, so those ones had kings.
The Wanga had a kingdom.
Yeah.
So, but it's only the Wanga. Remember, Luyas also is a creation. There's nothing like Abaluya before the 1930s. There were different groups of people. So the Wanga had a kingdom. I don't know what the Maragoli had, the Isuha, the people in Bungoma. They all had different ways of polities, as we call them, ways of governing themselves.
So as Africa, how do we redefine our democracy? Because as it is, we've had the larger part of Africa, say 60, 65 years of independence and working through this thing we are calling democracy. How do we redefine our own democracy? Or I don't know if it's actually it's a redefining, because we may not get to where we were back then, but how do we redefine it to suit our needs of today?
Yes. I think in many ways, through what we call, we cannot have direct democracy. Direct democracy is, like what used to happen in the Greek city-states, or even in many African countries. You all sit under the tree. No, ours, we had these elders sitting and deciding, but still, even now, if you go to northern Kenya, there's a lot of sitting under the tree, and all these men decide how are we going to do things. But you can see, and to sit in that tree, it's almost everybody seated there representing either their village, their clan. So in many ways, of course, we have all moved on from direct democracy. But there are countries that still exercise direct democracy, like Switzerland. And if you go to Switzerland, they vote. They're always voting. So think of the government doesn't make decisions. The people, you as an individual, of course, it's not all decisions, but most important decisions. So they're always having referendums to vote on this and that. If you stay in Switzerland for long, you'll be surprised. Every 2 months, there's something they are voting for as a referendum. Here how hard it is to do a referendum in Kenya. So in that way, Switzerland probably is the only modern state that continues with that direct democracy. Even so, for us, maybe this devolved system and the idea of public participation should be that kind of democracy where we are making decisions. But public participation in Kenya, in many ways, especially when it touches on the elites and their high stakes, it's a sham.
Yeah.
Like if you remember, it's usually a sham. You'll go, you'll give all your points in KICC or in your village, especially the ones at a national level at KICC. Nobody might take them seriously. Parliament doesn't take them seriously, especially this current parliament. So in many ways, there are little things that I think the state can do to make sure there is more participation. The devolved government was one way. And I think the devolved governments should have more power. If, like in Kenya, they had more power to decide on, say, education. This idea of even also deciding education, yes, at a national policy, there should be a national policy. But I believe at the county level, they should have also some policy, a bit of policy power to make decisions on certain things, as long as those policies probably coincide or go along by and large with the national policy. Issues of security. Why should the police seated in Vigilant House in Nairobi tell the police whether to beat crowds or what to do. I know they do that devolution, but you've seen, for instance, like, was it this year or last year? When we had protests in Mombasa, I watched one protest and nobody was shot, nothing happened. The police accompanied the protesters. I think it was one of the protests last year. So this was just one good maybe commander of the region or the OCPD who decided, no, I don't want bloodshed. So if we give people, those kind of people more power to make decisions, and then those people also all the time sit down and consult your people, sit with the youth groups, sit with the women, sit with the people in the street, like have what are they called these days, where all you do is consulting days. And one person who did that was Kivutha Kibwana when he was governor of Makueni. He had those local community councils that made decisions. And those are the people even who would say, we are now happy with the road. You can give this contractor the money they deserve as much as they probably also brought an expert to verify. Also in Burkina Faso, during Thomas Sankara's reign, and I believe I've had even the current popular president, the junta,
Ibrahim
Traore. They have those, I've been to Ouagadougou, and I remember the center of the town. I don't know where we can call the center of the town in Nairobi, maybe the Hilton or KICC. People used to sit there to make decisions about political stuff.
This is during Traore's...
No.
No, I'm asking...
That was during Sankara's time.
Oh, okay.
And if you read like that book, Sankara Speaks, he talks about those kind of things.
So you visited when Traore is in power?
No.
Oh,
soon after, not soon after,
before?
Around 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, when the embattled, or rather when the exiled Blaise Compaoré was the president.
Okay.
But I'm saying the things that happened during Sankara. So that kind of democracy from below. And there's a very good scholar called Issa Shivji that I would really encourage people to read. Participatory, he talks about the concept of participatory democracy. You know, and Issa Shivji talks about exactly what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. We may not be able to go back to that village way of first the Greek way of everybody making the decision in those city-states, which we call direct democracy. We may not be able to do the village African way of these elders, though in northern Kenya I've seen it still happens, elders sitting even sometimes deep in Maasai land and making decisions. But also we've seen that excludes so many people. Like in those, when the elders sit, I observed one group, the women don't even sit in that decision-making space. Because they don't have a stick, or because you need to have that stick first to say something, to even sit, which is the sad part. And so Issa Shivji, a very renowned leftist scholar from the University of Dar es Salaam, speaks about participatory democracy. And that's where I think and he gives us a roadmap of what democracy can look like in Africa, so that we live this liberal democracy. Because that's what Trump and this 1948 legacy and the US advances, liberal democracy, which is really based on individual rights, which is good, and I love individual rights, but also this idea of I can intervene if you're not giving people the rights that they deserve.
This issue of Trump saying he can intervene, where does it... I mean, with Venezuela story, I think will be told for years to come, because it's happening in a season where people didn't expect it would happen.
Yeah.
Number two, it's happening when a lot of us African countries look at having the US as an ally as a very important thing.
Yes.
So what does it mean for us then, who are allies of the US in such a case?
It means you need to center yourselves first. What are your values, you know? And that's the problem. That's a very good point you're making. Because Africans and all these colonized people, because of our history, whether it's that history of colonization or it's that history of being the not important countries around the world, we are always like, you know, You know, when somebody has low self-esteem,
Yeah.
the first thing they want to do is like, okay, who can I stand next to? Stand alone in that center. Create your own. You know, and that's why one person, one of my favorite presidents has always, of course, Kwame Nkrumah. In Ghana, they call him Osajifo, which is a bit also of an exaggeration.
What does that mean?
It's very crazy. It means the Redeemer. Can you imagine? Yeah, that's what they call him. Osajifo. Kwame Nkrumah. But maybe he redeemed them, I don't know. But Kwame Nkrumah, from when he became president to when he got kicked out through the coup, was very clear. Africa must unite. So if Africa was united, and I know, yes, people are like, is it possible now? I just hope these Gen Alphas who are very excited about I show speed during their time when they are the ones running the AU or running the country, one day they can say, look, because we are not serving, we are not powerful when we are individual countries. And not to say that, but because our presidents, our leaders are so selfish, they're just looking at the benefits you get when you're the president.
Yeah.
Can you imagine telling Ruto no? You know, given all the benefits, nepotism, giving people jobs, money, whatever. Not just Ruto, all these presidents we have. So many of them don't ever want to fathom the idea of a united Africa. And I know, of course, it may not exactly wouldn't look like the United States, where you have, are they 40 whatever states with one single federal president? Maybe we would have, but we have to start imagining that Africa and hopefully one day create it, because we will never be respected. Oh, we can be respected if, right now, Africa, everybody's saying this is where everybody wants to be.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to be even scared of Trump and start guarding, either through the African Union, creating a very strong Africa, because the main reason is that he's attacking, invading Venezuela, as we've seen. Geopolitics. Venezuela has the largest reserve, known reserve of oil in the world. And not just oil, critical minerals. Those minerals we are saying they are useful for these technology, phones and everything. But the largest known oil reserve. And so, given Maduro also, who's not been behaving very nicely, is authoritarian, jailing opponents and doing all sorts of corrupt deals with oil, it was very easy to have create some law. I mean, the US has these crazy laws. Can you imagine that? If you're doing things that are against American interests, they can come for you. And that's
crazy,
how,
man.
Yes. And even if you're not as long as you're in this world, maybe if you're in Mars, they'll not come for you. But as long as you're in the world, the US has a law when it comes to, terrorism, drugs, whatever, anything to do with, America's sovereignty. They attack you and they come for you and jail you in their prisons and they prosecute you through their courts. And that's what they used against Maduro, right?
Yeah.
How many people are authoritarians that especially around where we are, But because we don't have this largest oil reserve in the world, he's not interested.
But we saw him in Nigeria over Christmas, attacking again.
Yeah, but also he can't do much in Nigeria. Nigeria is a powerful country, and Nigeria will not bend. And somebody even keeps saying, the day Nigeria will put its house in order. The day Nigerians put their house in order. The only problem with Nigerians, they all want to japa. You know what is japa?
No.
They call it japa, run away. They are all, everybody's like, I was seeing in some post somewhere on Twitter, or whatever, X now. They're all like, oh, how can we, which is a new country, where are the visa regulations less? That's all Nigerians think about. Where are they going to Japan to run away? So if the day Nigeria puts its house in order and starts becoming a powerhouse, that's the only time Black people everywhere in the world will be respected. And it's true. Because this is the highest population also of Black people. The next high population of Black people is in Brazil. But if Nigeria can put its house in order, people will start respecting Black people. You'll see people being told if you're African, your visa, you can come in 3 months without a visa, like other countries. That's what happened to India and China. Once they started, making the economic moves and but if we continue the way we are, nobody cares. That's why Trump can threaten even Nigeria. What will you do? But I don't think they can.
But
Nigeria is such a high
with the attack they already did over Christmas.
It is. But also I don't think they can go further because I don't know. Nigeria is too powerful. I mean, not
too powerful, not for US.
Not for the US, of course, but in the region, in the African region.
Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting perspective because I think from my perspective is Trump will do anything so long as he gets what he wants.
Of course.
So it doesn't matter whether you're powerful in Africa or not. For him, it's
oil.
Yeah.
It's the geopolitics. And that's part of the reason he was attacking Nigeria, the oil.
Yeah.
That's why he's not interested in the dictators around us or inside us, around, the authoritarianism in this corner of the world, because we don't have any serious geopolitical. And also, I mean, Kenya is needed, for instance, because of Al-Shabaab, to help the US fight Al-Shabaab and after what happened in 9/11 and stuff like that. But anywhere else. But also, remember Trump, this is not the first time America has intervened. I think intervention is too soft a word. Attacked other countries, especially in Latin America.
Yeah.
I was reading, they've attacked more than 40 times. Not during Trump's regime, but over time.
Over time, yes.
So if you remember, of course, Pinochet, even though he was a dictator, Panama, in Nicaragua. I mean, the US has always been attacking. Even Mexico, if you know Mexico was as big as California. California belonged to Mexico, but also attacked. And then there's a day I saw Trump saying even the Gulf of Mexico needs to be renamed. I think he even signed something. It was renamed to the Gulf of, I don't know, maybe the USA or something. So this is a very bad precedent. I think that's the point that I would wish to make. It's a very bad precedent, and especially that attack in Nigeria. The African Union should have come out guns blazing.
Did they?
I only remember them making noise about Venezuela. And then after that, and it was a little statement, not making noise. A little statement released on their Twitter and stuff like that.
Do you think the African Union is worth having as of where we are today and what they do and all the reports, like it's an AI generated, we
I know, especially now in the age of AI.
Yeah.
Before that, maybe they were cutting and pasting. Now they just need to go. No, of course. You see, international institutions are there to stay as much as sadly. Also, okay, and that's a good question you're asking, especially now with the defunding of the UN by the US. Because Trump signed that all those 80 organizations.
Yeah.
And America is a huge, huge funder to the United Nations organizations, and there are many. So, and the challenge also with the African Union, and that's a question many people ask, do we still need the African Union? One, the African Union does not even have enough funding to run its recurrent budget. The main funder, after Gaddafi, again, another US attack, intervention, and look how Libya looks like. Because these interventions are framed as very important because of democracy. Do we have democracy in Libya now? No. It's probably worse. I actually went to Libya when I was very young. It was my first flight out of Kenya. I traveled to the rest of the countries by road, but this one I flew. through Emirates. When we were in university. And Libya was so beautiful. Of course, it was hugely an authoritarian regime, terrible in terms of rights of women, because, again, it was based on Sharia law. But in terms of development and all those things, it looked amazing. Right now, I've never been back, but when I look at YouTube, I'm just amazed at the destruction. So, and in terms of, if you look at the indexes at that time, human development and economic development, Libya was up there. So because they used their oil resources for the right thing.
Yeah.
But again, so that's why we need to start questioning this idea of intervention is equals to democracy. It's a lie. Democracy is something, as I've suggested, that has to come from below. And unless we start developing democracy from below, there's no amount of intervention that can come from the top and adjust. Look at Spain. I teach in Spain, and last is it December, they were celebrating 50 years since the dictatorship of one Franco, the Franco dictatorship, which ended in 1975. But the Spanish people themselves, yes, there was a King Carlos who came and kind of helped with now transition in the country. It came from themselves. Nobody could have attacked them and removed this dictator and then said, okay, now and what is even interesting in Venezuela, Trump, after abducting or kidnapping Maduro and his wife, left the country has been run by Maduro's deputy.
Yeah.
Do you think Maduro's deputy is democratic now that they were running an authoritarian state together with Maduro? No. So they are continuing with those terrible corruption and authoritarian. They are continuing with that regime. So maybe they may change, but you never know.
I mean, if they have changed, they're just to align with what Trump wants.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And the main thing Trump wants is a sure deal to give them the oil reserves, to make sure the pipeline does not stop. Because once in a while, Maduro would refuse. So that is what I think Trump decided strategically with his generals. This guy, because once in a while he's frustrating us, why don't we just create let's accuse him of narco trafficking, abduct him, because as I said, it's in the US law. They can abduct anybody in the world if that person is going against US sovereignty. And it worked. But it's a very bad precedent. We need to fight it, and that's what I was saying. If the African Union, one day if we get...
I like the idea of fighting, but who do you think is going to fight Trump? Looking at it.
Who is going to fight Trump? How can we fight Trump?
In fact, as Africa.
Exactly, and not just Trump. How can we fight any leader, any powerful leader who creates this idea of... So I think the people of the US need to fight Trump. And they will only fight him by the ballot. I mean, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. Because he knows this is his last term. He can. And it was the worst mistake, the MAGA, MAGA, the group that supports him, those crazy, whatever. The MAGA, oh God. And the MAGAs are still supporting what he has done even now.
But for them, it's the idea of making America great. If it involves that, then...
Of course. Good. Let's go. Plus. Let's go. And it's Nigeria next. It's Kenya next. It's, God knows who next. So now I think Americans have to, especially that MAGA crazy group, should see the connections between electing what is political leadership and what is to elect a good leader. Of course, they don't care because they're in another ideology. But I think the general Americans who could have been very apathetic in elections now, especially the Democrats, even sometimes we've had good Republicans, but the good Democrats and the good Republicans, they need to make sure such people never ever get to that place of being the presidential candidate. Because look, the damage somebody can do. And also to America's reputation. Now America is actually looking like a rogue state. It's no longer the barn of democracy. It's like a rogue state that is basically practicing these Donroe doctrines based on what some people have called neo-imperialism. It's like a new form of imperialism.
Yeah.
I need oil. Okay, who has it? It's you. I attack you, and I'll find something to accuse you, of course. And then I bring you to the US. And it's so wrong because it questions the whole idea of those UN conventions, Geneva Conventions we talked about, created in 1948. As problematic as they are, as I tried to explain, that's the law we have, and that's what we must use till we refine it or change it. Now we are talking about 80 years after the UN. So till we change it, that's what we have. Okay. And that's the reason they were created, because without that, the question of order, and I said the main reason the world, we had to sit together, we were not there because we were colonized, but those who sat together is because they said, we need order. How do we create order? We can only create order through these laws that have to bind us. But if somebody will be waking up high on his maga, whatever he drinks, and decides, no, today I'm attacking Kenya. What do they have? Tomorrow I'm attacking, I don't know which country.
Iran is probably
Iran, actually. I loved the Iranian people. Was it a couple of days or yesterday? Because they are on the street and they are saying, dare you.
Yeah.
We dare you. And for Iran, it's been a long running. So I don't think he will go to Iran. But again, as you're saying, Trump is Trump. I think there is something not together. And also the people around him. That's what scares me. The lack of, because before even they do those things, like when he attacked Maduro or kidnapped Maduro, it was I was reading that Trump gave them the go-ahead. You remember even when they killed Osama, it's Obama who gave them the So the president is very, very powerful. He's the one who presses that button. So we need to be, and that's why I'm saying, if it's the African AU leaders, but not all of them will rise. Like I wouldn't expect the Kenyan president to oppose Trump after this visit. And you remember that visit where it was very weird. I don't see why they had to sign a peace deal between Rwanda and DRC for minerals again in Washington. So Trump is really using his power.
Because we are still tied up as Kenya, we probably have so many things tied to the US that we can't say no. Even Kenya, it's...
Yeah, but like now the US, what do we have tied? It's largely maybe the EPZ, that's the main way we are benefiting through AGOA. And of course, and you can see the US is very strategic. It only renews those contracts for 1 year so that you keep begging, and being nice. They don't tell you for 5 years now. Yeah. I think it was extended for 1 year. So yes, maybe a few of those deals, but that's what I'm saying. Africa, things can only change even if we do not unite, even if we don't become one country. At least the AU needs to change in a way it is like the European Union. The way the European Union is what we call a supra-international organization. It's not just like the AU. The AU, can say, just recommends. You can do this, statements. Attacking people is wrong. That's all. Taking over a country like the junta is wrong, but, they can do nothing. But at the European Union, whatever that is passed as by the European Council, the Parliament, and then they elect members. Even Kenya, we have Pan-African parliamentarians, but whatever they do in parliament is useless because they'll maybe create a declaration, but it never becomes law. But whatever European parliamentarians pass in Brussels, so it becomes law. So till we get to that level, the European Union at that level, whatever it creates, even it's that bureaucrat, the executive, becomes law for the rest of the countries. So we may not even move, as I'm saying, to that level of having a one president for the entire Africa, but at least our African Union Commission needs to be so powerful that it's a supranational body, that the laws that they create are implemented without fail to the bottom. That's the only way we can be able to start even becoming a more serious force. And over time, I hope maybe people who are not even born today, one day they actually create a proper United States of Africa, just like Kwame Nkrumah had dreamt. Because that way, nobody, given, and you see one thing we are failing to realize, Africa right now, what's the average age?
19,
this is the
20.
average age, 20.
Yeah.
And so, and what's the average age in Europe? 48, 50. No, it's 40.
60.
No, it's between 48, 50, most of the countries. And so it means in the next 20 years, those 48, 50-year-olds will be 70.
Yeah.
Old, dying, and, not very useful. In the next 20 years, these our 20-year-olds, how old will they be? 40. And this will be a huge population of people. And that's why these African leaders, most of them are jokers. Because this again will be people, because we are not creating jobs, we are doing nothing for this group of people. So they'll get to 40, these people probably will never ever have worked, labda to the normal hustling, selling jugu karanga here and there and eggs, but no proper jobs, no proper, like things that make you start moving. The things that make you like build your little house, get married or get children or take care of your kids. These things, most people will not be able to have achieved them. And so what happens? That's why we'll have a lot of thugs also. People are not thinking about that. Criminality and all that. But also, thank God for technology. Many young people are running into technology and seeing how they can make use of it and make money and make a life. If you look at Asia, when they were going through their own youth bulge, what did they do? They created industry like a nonsense, like China, or like this Singapore we are being told, or whatever. So all this, and that's why their average age even for them is now early 40s. But they went through that bulge, their youth bulge, very gently. But for us, it's gonna be chaos, real chaos.
And I think Africa has experienced. We had protests in Kenya, protests in Tanzania, Mozambique had elections. They had protests. Morocco had the same. So the youth bulge is across the continent.
Yes,
when
with clueless leaders. That's the sad thing.
And old ones, because you see, like Cameroon has a 92-year-old guy.
There's Biya, there's Equatorial Guinea with another crazy one who's been there since 1979. Yeah.
There's our neighbor here.
Exactly. And even the so-called younger ones, they're not any better. Because even like Ruto is younger, but he's still using authoritarian tactics. Like you don't kill protesters. And being very unfair to the opposition or people who are opposed. That's not a democracy. A liberal democracy is where people you let go and let be. Freedom. The tenets of a liberal democracy, the main things are liberty, freedom, and equality before the law. And most of even if we have the so-called younger politicians, if they don't have a liberal mindset or a mindset based, because most of these young people, you saw everybody's talking about I Should Speed.
Yeah.
Those young people who are like his fandom, they are very liberal in their mindset. They want to have freedom to do what they want, freedom of expression, and then they show up on the street tomorrow and then you shoot them dead. Why? Just because they are opposed to you. Those are like 1930, not even 1930. Those are very archaic forms of beliefs. And you talked about African society and our forms of democracy. Africans, in their ways of thinking, in their ways of being, especially with governance, there was space for dissent and disagreement. And that's why those wazees under the tree sit the whole day haggling till they come to an agreement. They haggle. Okay, let's continue. And if they don't agree, they come in today, tomorrow, or whichever set dates, they keep talking and talking. That was our way. But what happens with the current leadership? You hear, I don't know, your opponent is meeting people in another, you go and you throw tear gas at church women. Who does that? So those are the things. If we are to go back to those values that we are really about, Africans really haggle till they agree. And that's why we have like even these marriage ratios and coitos. There's a lot of haggling because it's our nature.
Yeah.
so that we come to a point of agreement. We don't force. And that's who we are.
It's a very nice example of ratio.
Yeah.
So I look at it, Africa, there are countries, we have 3 countries now who are ruled by presidents, which American democracy again defines as juntas because they came in via coup. But when we look at the reason why those coups happened, it's the same reasons we are talking about. People were unhappy with the government, and so they kicked out, quote unquote, what was democratic and took power. We have Traore, we have Niger and Mali, and now they even have their Sahel alliance. Do you feel like this is now a form of redefining what democracy is? Because you see, even coup is defined by...
Of course.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And that even in political studies, there's a whole... People are starting to question. Of course, a democracy is ruled by the people. Because we all go and wake up very early, as Kenyans like to wake up so early to cast their vote.
Yeah.
Believing that I'm so powerful. But also the challenge with this power, you're only powerful at that moment when you're, choosing your
leader.
Ambrose over Kanyama, then that day you're very, very powerful. But sadly, our democracy doesn't matter after that. It has, especially with the captured parliament like in Kenya, the last 4 years, I don't know how many years, since 2022, because the parliament, because then a parliamentarian after that becomes like, you're a servant of the people. You do what the people, depending whether what they're telling you is the right thing, but you really follow your people depending on what kind of things they're saying. You don't also follow bad things. And so democracy, when we have a military junta that comes in, and then they start doing the right thing, and that has thrown this idea of democracy, elections, people voting. It's been questioned, really, because they're looking at certain countries that voted their presidents even next door to them, and then looking at if you talk about development indicators or human development indicators, or I was seeing this, the factories that have been set up by Traore, the roads that have been constructed, and you're thinking, wow. So on one hand, this is a junta. So a junta is power by the military, a military that takes over. And the junta received a bad name from Latin America because in the 70s and 80s, 70s especially, most of the governments in Latin America, military juntas took over, the Pinochets and others. Actually, that's how whoever became very famous. Our most, I don't know whether... Our very famous ICC prosecutor, Luis Moreno Ocampo. Because Luis became the prosecutor in Argentina who was prosecuting the military juntas. He was very active in prosecuting these juntas, and that's how finally he got a job at the International Criminal Court.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's how Luis, now he's a filmmaker or something. No, he's a lecturer somewhere, I think in New York. But he became powerful, prosecute. So in the 70s, Latin America was crazy. There were one coup after another, horrible dictators. Because the challenge also with many juntas, once they come into power, they are not, they practice authoritarianism. And I know, of course, there's this dilemma: how much power? If I allow people to have so much power by letting them, to freely express themselves, liberty, protest, or do whatever they want, there's that kind of lie that if I do this, then I will not, development will not happen. It's almost a dilemma that is not actually researched, or rather that is not even true. That you cannot develop without order or a lot of authority. But the two can go hand in hand.
They can coexist.
They can coexist. And actually, I was listening to someone who was talking about comparing China's development and India. China has developed within authoritarian system. India, which is the biggest democracy in the world because of the sheer number of members of parliament, has developed the same. And now I think I have not checked, but India's, I think even is now higher than China. But India has developed while in a democracy. Of course, it's not a perfect democracy, very problematic. But you see, so, and some people have argued that even the gains in India are much more than in China, which has developed within an authoritarian system. So juntas, while I think we should take them by case basis, I think for me, I want freedom. You know, I want to have both, and it's sad that Africans are now forced to choose. We should not be forced to choose. I want to have both. I want to be free. You know what we call, is it Chapter 5 of our Kenyan Constitution, the Bill of Rights? Freedom of expression. I want to tweet how I feel like, or of course, as long as within the limits of respecting everybody.
Yeah.
And I want, if I'm unhappy about my president, I want to share my dissent. If I don't agree with the government policy, if I want to do it loudly, I should be allowed to. And I want development. I want to see roads and good hospitals, good schools for our children using public resources. I want to see industry. So also my problem with these juntas is creating this false dichotomy of you either shut up, the freedom, you either have freedom or you have development. No, the two should go hand in hand.
It would be interesting to have them both.
Yes.
But do you feel like as, quote, democratic countries, we kind of imagine maybe like, for instance, Burkina Faso is not free, or they are not free to express themselves?
No, it's not about imagining here.
It is what it is. It
is what it is. Just ask anybody in Burkina if they can tweet or say anything on X the way Kenyans. As much as you saw, also there has been a clawback again on those freedoms in the Ruto regime, with people being arrested.
Because I was going to ask now, what's the difference between that in Burkina, what is happening in Tanzania, what is happening in Kenya, and probably other states?
But the three countries in Kenya are not democracies. They are pseudo. These are pseudo-democracy. They are pseudo-authoritarian, They're not. Kenya is not a proper democracy. It's not a proper liberal democracy. Kenya is actually an electoral democracy. I would call it an electoral democracy. It's just a democracy based on elections. Because if Kenya was a liberal democracy, nobody would ever be arrested because, I don't know, they have drawn a cartoon of the president. Never. Or because they have put a picture of a dead president in a coffin. Never. This is not a democracy. It's a lie. It's not a liberal democracy. We can call it an it's a mongrel democracy, you know. It's a funny mishmash of an authoritarian. And it's really sad that since after Kibaki, Kenyatta Jr. and Ruto have actually, if you look at even the statistics from like Freedom House, the Freedom House Index, which talks about the level of freedom in the country, which really speaks to whether you're democratic or not, it has come down considerably. So during Kibaki's time, that was the best democracy that we could have said was a democracy. I can't remember people being randomly arrested, apart from the things that, of course, dodgy things that Njoki was doing.
Yeah.
Like, you remember bringing those interesting people to read Standard. So, but during Kibaki's time, that is what we can call, even though it was not a fully liberal democracy, I would say that is the democracy I would give highest points in Kenya's history. And then after that, it's been downhill all through.
But there is hope.
There is hope.
There is always hope.
There is hope. But it's really sad because these are younger leaders. I would have expected better. With Kenyatta, Uhuru, it came down, and with 2022, it's going even down.
Okay.
Because you shouldn't be arrested for, I don't know, tweeting somebody, a dead president. No. The minute you put yourself, even you today, tomorrow you decide you're going to be the member of parliament of some constituency in Nairobi, be ready. Be ready for all sorts of things. And I'm not saying that, especially the way they insult women, that is really, really unfair. But the minute you go, like, have you seen the kind of things even Trump, they drew about him, especially now? If he was to go and arrest all these people, how many people would you arrest? So I think if you decide to go to the public, you need to be very secure in who you are, so that, and to actually understand what is a liberal democracy. Because I don't think the current president in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda, they don't even know what is a democracy. No, what's this man in Uganda? He had an understanding. He was quite something when he became president. Coming from Nyerere, coming from the Dar es Salaam school, he was quite something. But it's been downhill all through. But this is Kenya. We cannot pride ourselves to be a democracy, a liberal democracy. I can only call it a mongrel democracy, electoral democracy, because we do voting every 5 years very well. Of course, very well, I don't know, but at least that happens.
There's a voting that
happens.
Okay.
But we do not, our leaders, especially after Kibaki, and the worst still, right, the current leadership right now, does not uphold the ideals of a liberal democracy at all.
Okay. Mm-hmm. When you look at, again, I want to use West Africa. Do you feel like the president? Of course, they are presidents, whether we like it or not. They are leading those countries. They are still juntas, but they are presidents. Do you feel like they are fighting neocolonialism? And do we have a way as a continent uniting against neocolonialism? Or do we have leaders who've now become, in fact, they're better puppets in 2026?
No, I think one of the things we need to do, as much as they are juntas and they are all these things, they are authoritarian, because let's not sugarcoat, they're actually very authoritarian. As I was saying, you'll be arrested any day if you're challenging them. But as you're saying, even in this so-called electoral democracy, it's happening. But we need to appreciate, I think, the three, and especially Traore. The problem is I never hear him, even in French, speak anywhere. Most of the stuff is AI generated on what he's doing. But the symbolism he has brought, and especially I think Africans needed somebody. After Sankara died in, is it 87? We have not had, we've not had, for a very long time, we've not had a leader who speaks for that Pan-Africanism, self-pride as Black people, as African people, self-pride for Africa, refusing to bow to the Trumps and the...
chasing the West.
And exactly, and the Emmanuel Macrons of the world, and trying to be liked by the West. So for that, I have a lot of respect for Traore and his group, because we don't have that. And the few times we've had, like, somebody... when the Kenyan president tried that initially, fighting, I don't know, trying to, I would say, posture as a Pan-Africanist, I think people 1 year later, they saw it was actually a lie. He didn't have the, because to be a Pan-Africanist, it's also ideological. Very ideological clarity. And that's one thing I believe Traore and his other presidents from Mali and Niger have, ideological clarity, and it gives us a lot of pride, I think, and also the people of Burkina, because then it shows we can actually stand up to the West. While we are waiting for this African Union dream, I'm saying, of the United States of Africa, and hopefully then we can have one day a leader who can stand up for the West. I'm sure we'll be dead by then. At least we can be seeing our Traore on what it could look like.
Yeah.
Yes, so I have a lot of respect for what he's doing in creating that counter against Western hegemony, Western ideals, and saying, look, we are fine, we're doing well, leave us alone. Yeah.
I love that. Of course, here at Alpha House, we are big on Pan-African conversations for reasons, of course, feeling we need a very empowered African youth. Do you feel like the idea of Pan-Africanism is getting back to the people? Is it a conversation that has life? And what are the possibilities of giving it life, not just conversations?
That's a very good question. No, Pan-Africanism actually is fashionable again.
It is becoming, yeah.
Which makes me very happy as a Pan-Africanist. And I credit social media or this digital space, And because maybe for the last couple of years, with the prevalence now of everybody can see, like Traore, and they can see the roads, and they can see, whatever that he's saying, and all these people who are loudly have been loudly talking about these issues, Now they can easily, they don't even need to travel, what's his name? Joshua Maponga does not need to travel from Zimbabwe to even come to Nairobi. People will watch him. Or Chi, what's her name? The former AU ambassador to the US, Chiporimba, the one who told off the US,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the name was
but you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. So now they can actually watch her quickly and, and not beyond those, the big names that we know. Many. I think there are so many people who live Pan-Africanism right here among us. And there's so much. And now with social media, everybody can connect, right?
Yeah.
And beyond even that, the digital, the whatever, creative world, look at how images of people like Sankara travel. Books now, I think publishing has become more relaxed. You have all this publishing of different ideas and what have you. So there's a lot. Pan-Africanism initially was, as we know it, we even started questioning people like Jomo Kenyatta and their Pan-Africanist. Initially he was.
Yeah.
But there's somebody who said Jomo started off as a Pan-Africanist when he was with like George Padmore. And that's why actually Nairobi is a very Pan-African city in terms of the naming. Very few women. I think there are only 2 women in the streets of Nairobi. But it's very Pan-Africanist. If you think about the names of the roads, George Padmore Road. Yeah, we have such a road.
Yes, we have. I'm actually searching in my head the roads named after women.
No, there are 3. I can tell you because this is very important to me. Mama Ngina, and then the people who named are people who are close to Jomo. Mama Ngina. So Ngina is, what do you call it? Mama Ngina Street. You all know it.
Yes.
The one there near that movie theater. Wamboi Road.
Oh, the one.
The one in Muthaiga.
Oh, there is that one, yes, also.
The one near Muthaiga Golf Club, which is Kenyatta's daughter, the one who became one of the first mayors. Yeah.
There's another one.
There's another
the second
one.
Wife.
Wahoo Road.
Yes,
but that one is there in Gado.
Yes.
There in Gong Road somewhere.
So they were all they're all Kenyatas.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
And thank you.
Oh, that was added.
Thank you. Now that was the one added out of shame after she was made Nobel laureate. And we needed to look like we are good people who care about women. Women's legacies.
What?
But the 3 roads in Nairobi are all named after Kenyatta's wives and daughter. It's very sad.
Wow.
And yet there are so many.
Thought about it.
There are so many roads. We need to have a podcast just even on roads and legacies. People like Modoni Nyanjiro died there outside what do you call it? This Central Police, which was called King's Police or something. Central Police Station. You've heard of Muthoni Nyanjiro? The one who was protesting in 1922. There was this woman who led other men in protesting against the arrest of Harry Thuku.
Oh, the story I know is why the road is called Harry Thuku. So
because Harry Thuku was inside that jail.
Yes.
Was inside Central Police. Oh. But the blood that remains that was shed on that street is Muthoni Nyanjiro's. Because Muthoni Nyanjiro was the first to be shot by the colonial police, and there were others seated at Norfolk. Norfolk was there even then. And the settlers just came out with their guns and shot these people, who were making noise where they were having evening English tea. And so they shot them dead. They're like, who are these making noise? And Harry Thuku, of course, had just been arrested for organizing, trying to create that association. So Muthoni Nyanjiro should have a street, probably Moi Avenue, or that one of Harry Thuku, and give Harry Thuku the next one, because that's where the blood was spilled. So there are so many women who need to be back to the streets, who need to be remembered in our streets. But you can see, that's why I'm saying. But as much as he forgot women, he named a few Pan-Africanists. They named a few, George Padmore, Agwin Skodek. No, there was one who was a lawyer, a black lawyer, Du Bois Road. All these Pan-Africanists, when they were renaming streets, got streets named after them. Garvey. I'm sure we have a Garvey Road.
Garvey, yeah.
Exactly.
As you head to Kilimani, yes.
Exactly. Marcus Garvey. So think of the Pan-Africanists' names, I recently learned about a new Pan-Africanist called Hubert Humphrey. But he was not that famous, but there's a scholar who wrote a book about him in the US again. But yeah, you can see we have Garvey, Du Bois, and quite a number of Pan-Africanists are named in Nairobi. And so Pan-Africanism is in our streets. Women, of course, are erased out of our streets, which is a huge gap. And I hope we can do something about it. Pan-Africanism now is in the imagery. You find people with T-shirts of Sankara, beyond, So Kimathi traveled. I'm sure you've seen so many people named Kimathi.
Yeah.
Even Jerry Rawlings, the former president of Ghana, his son is called Kimathi Rawlings.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so many Americans are called Kimathi. Never mind, they can't even pronounce their own names. They're like, Kimathi, Kimathi, But anyway, it's for me, I like the gesture. It's like, wow. It means that this idea of blackness and an international blackness, because that's what Pan-Africanism is about, fighting white supremacy and fighting imperialism. So Pan-Africanism became the tool and the method for fighting this overbearingness of white supremacy, white racism, and also even white capitalism. So we are constantly resisting. Yeah, but now I like that, but we also need to be careful that we need also to be ideologically clear on what it is and what it's about. Otherwise, we will have, as you've seen, the fake Pan-Africanists who today are, we are fighting, I don't know what, and the next day they're Trump's best friend. So we need to be very careful because the two cannot go together. You cannot be a Pan-Africanist and then the next day Trump is saying, you're my very good friend. No. Yeah.
So we just have to keep these conversations going on Pan-Africanism. So even the young generation understands. And the beauty is technology, as you mentioned, is passing this information.
Yes.
Quick, fast.
And hashtags. Like I'm sure if you check like a hashtag on Pan-Africa, you'll be surprised on the discussions are lively and what. But Pan-Africanism is about love. It's about love. It's about love of ourselves as Africans and Black people and love of our fellow Black people. And so I don't see how when you're a politician, if you love your people, you're the one, you're the most corrupt, or you're nepotist, and you're doing all these horrible things to undermine your people. So at the core of Pan-Africanism, as an ideology, as a method, for me, I would call love. And love of the Black people, love of ourselves. Because also, we need to be very clear. Many of us Black people don't like ourselves at all. From the names we use. Of course, I know we were given those names. From the way we are. Like this, we were talking about this locally foreign acquired foreign accent. You'll find somebody with this locally acquired foreign accent, and you're thinking, you've never been to the US. Why? You're still here. But it's because we are always looking at ourselves in relation to the other and white other. So till we stop that Western gaze, the same way, stop looking at yourself through the Western gaze and start looking at yourself and from your ancestors, and draw on that. It's powerful. You will be unstoppable.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I think we will have another conversation on Pan-Africanism, basically, and the tenets. And it would be, when I connect what you've said, I've also interviewed, he's got Professor Munene, the other name, Masharia. Yes. And, all these other people who speak about Pan-Africanism, and when you think about it, it just becomes very interesting. And there's just a feeling of this thing needs to be taken over to this generation and the next one and the next one. So we have to keep sharing. But Dr. Njoki, thank you so much for coming through. It's been fun having you around.
Thank you.
Beautiful conversations. I enjoyed myself so much. Would be happy to have you, if you don't mind, another time. Certainly, yes. When you go back to USIU, pass our love to your students and the community there.
Sure.
And this, I'll give you the last word to our viewers. Here.
Oh, your viewers.
Yes.
I think we have a responsibility to arm ourselves, because it's like almost as you've seen what has happened with Trump. It's almost like we're in war. And it's a war of ideology, a war of power, a war of failing to be recognized as people, especially if you're somebody who is coming from a weaker state, from a race that is not dominant. If you're not the dominant people in the world, then we are all at risk, right? And so we have to arm ourselves with the knowledge that we should be knowing, because once you're conscious, and that's why I think Iran would be very difficult for him to do anything, because you saw the consciousness of the people on the street. Even the people of Venezuela, I believe, are very, very conscious. But of course, they also had a leader who also had done a few bad things. So we need to arm ourselves. We need to continue, I think, with that spirit of fighting for what is right. And also, and the truth, because they say the truth will set you free. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Set yourself. Karibu sana once again.
Asante.
To you who's been watching this, thank you very much. We'll catch you on the next episode. But before we close, so for this year, for everyone who sits there, you have to leave one question to the person who sits there. I don't know who it is yet, but I will pass the question to them. Could be on any topic. So what question would you want the person who sits there to answer next?
Oh, my. The question we've been talking about is, can we unite? Is African unity possible, and how?
Great.
Yes, we want a United States of Africa. I believe in it.
All right.
Yes.
I love that. So if you're watching this and you're going to be sitting here, just know, is a united Africa possible?
A United States of Africa.
United States of Africa possible.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for watching. We'll definitely catch you on the next one. See you.